I mean, I know, right? I mean, can you imagine if God really actually did make bread fall from heaven? I mean, how hilarious would that be? I mean, look. Oh, sorry, Sid. I know, right? I mean, oh, dangerous. Oh, hi. Sorry. Me and Sid were having a serious conversation about when God fed the Israelites in the desert. I actually know a story about this. Do you want to hear it? It's about a boy named Iru. Iru stepped out of the tent and squinted at the night sky. He had just checked his family supplies and he knew they were out of all the food that they had brought with them to follow God in the desert. He was nervous. Back in Egypt, he always knew where his next meal would come from. The markets, they were always full. The shops always had plenty. And even his house always had food. Oh, his mouth just watered, remembering all those amazing foods. Leeks and vegetables, lamb, lentils and fruit. And his favourite, sweet cakes that his grandmother made. Now, he was living in a tent, surrounded by sand, and he had no idea what his next meal would be. "Son," said his mother, poking her head out of the tent. "Don't worry. Do you remember what Moses said at the big meeting? God told him that he is going to bring us plenty of bread to eat in the morning." "Yes, Mum, I remember," said Iru. He turned and he gazed at God's huge fiery pillar of cloud standing bright against the darkness, and he wondered, but how will God bring us bread to eat way out here in the desert and do it overnight? His mother smiled and joined him outside in the cool evening breeze. "Oh, I don't know, Iru, but I do know that our God never sleeps. Night or day, he will provide what we need." And she ruffled his hair, kissed the back of his head. "I guess we'll just have to wait to see till morning." Later that evening, Iru lay in bed and listened to the sound. The thousands of people camping all around, settling in for the night. Babies cried, dads sang songs, and old people whispered around their fires, guessing about the bread that God had promised to deliver. He slowly drifted to sleep, his heart troubled, wondering how God would bring bread while he slept. In the morning, a shout from his brother jolted him from his sleep. More shouts erupted from his tent. Iru scrambled to throw on his clothes as he stumbled into the blinding morning light, barefoot. Instantly, something felt different, slightly wet. What was he standing on? The ground was covered in thin dew and something else. His eyes adjusted to the light, and he saw that the ground was blanketed in a thin layer of something he'd never seen before. Something no one had ever seen before. "What is it?" he asked himself. Iru carefully reached down and touched it, amazed. Up close he could see lots of individual pieces of something white and small, hard and bubbly, beautiful and different. His mother was sitting on a rock, rolling up a pile of the stuff between her fingers. "Iru, Moses said that this is the bread that the Lord has given us to eat. Look at it." His mother threw him a jar. "Here you go, son. Fill it up with as much as you think you'll eat today. Come on." And then Iru dropped to his knees and he scooped several piles of precious grain into his jar. "Fill it up with only enough for today?" he asked. "Shouldn't we gather as much as we can so that we can eat tomorrow and the next day? Who knows when we will get this again?" So Iru filled his jar and then he used both arms and hands to scoop up a large mound of white pieces into his robes. "I don't want to be hungry ever again." "Iru, stop. Stop. Iru, stop!" Iru locked eyes with his mother and he froze with the large scoop of white stuff still in his arms. He could feel his face getting hot. His mother hurried over and crouched down next to him, and she spoke firmly but gently. Iru, during the night God provided this food for us to eat today. God said he would provide in the night for our tomorrows, one tomorrow at a time. I trust that. Iru looked at his mum's hopeful face and took a deep breath. He opened his arms and he let the large mound of white flakes slowly slip from his arms and off his robes. Throughout the next hour, he watched in wonder as the sun slowly melted the leftover flakes on the ground until they disappeared. And he watched as people ground up the hard pieces they collected, cooked them in pots, and made flat pieces of bread with them. He was amazed at the taste of this new food, thick and satisfying, with a flicker of honey and a dash of oil. That night he stared at the setting sun, and Iru realised that they'd eaten all of their food. There was nothing left for tomorrow. But he wasn't afraid or nervous anymore. He smiled at God's cloud beginning to glow in the darkening sky. And as he lay down that night, he placed his empty jar by his bed. He smiled a little and he closed his eyes, ready for God's next delivery in the night. Well, thank you for listening to that story. I hope you learnt a valuable lesson out of it about how God provides for us, for all our needs when we need it. Until next time, it's goodbye from Sid and me. Say goodbye, Sid. Bye.